Welcome back to Pen and Reel. I'm your host, Uncle Joel, and I really want to talk about Tenet. Now this one's kind of difficult for me because I have certain people back home that I would normally talk to about movies, but the theaters aren't open right now back home. So no one there has seen Tenet, and I'm just kind of left on my own. So with that in mind, I've really been wrestling with how I feel about this movie. Now to start with, this is a really good movie. I really enjoyed it. The action is phenomenal. The choreography is just mind-boggling. The special effects are excellent. The story is very compelling. It's all very well done, and this is another example of just how masterful Christopher Nolan is. But there are a few things that detracted from the experience from me, just a little. Once I got familiar with the basic concept and the basic setup, they started setting up things and set up a few different sequences that I instantly knew how they were going to play out later on in the movie. And so on the one hand, that predictability I found very frustrating. But on the other hand, I also generally didn't care. Because you see, when those moments were introduced, I kind of groaned like, oh, okay, this is what they're going to do. And sure enough, I was right. They did exactly what I was expecting. But they did it so well that I wound up not caring at all that I predicted it. And that's the thing that I found so interesting about this movie, is that even though I was able to predict several different beats, I didn't care how predictable it was. It was just so masterfully done and so interesting to watch them execute it that that predictability didn't matter. If anything, it built a sense of anticipation of, okay, let's see how they do this. Let's see how this pays off. And there were several sequences that I was watching and trying to figure out how they filmed it, since there are some things that are moving forward in time normally and other things that are moving backwards in time. So it was like, okay, is there splicing techniques for, like, okay, they have this thing going forward normally and then they filmed this other one going normally, and then they just reversed it and then spliced them together? But no. It wasn't like that. So I watched a little bit of a behind the scenes for Tenet, and they were focused on a choreographed fight between one person who was going forward in time and another person who was going backwards in time. And it was just this mind-boggling fight sequence. I was like, okay, that guy is clearly getting pulled around backwards through time, and this person's going forward, and so, but they're tangling together and like tumbling over one another. And how did they film that? Like, how could you splice that together so smoothly, especially knowing that Christopher Nolan doesn't like using CG? And then I watched this behind the scenes piece, and they were learning how to do all of their movements backwards. And it's just incredible how well they pulled it off. This didn't look like people who were trying to appear to go backwards. This looked like they had filmed people going forward and then reversed it. But that's not what they did. It's just, on a technical level, this movie is insane. And so my experience with the movie is a very strange one. Like, I found myself connecting far more on an emotional level with Interstellar, Dunkirk, and Inception. And yet with Tenet, I was so much more engaged intellectually and just impressed with like the technical side of it and trying to figure out how they did different things. And I wound up enjoying this movie in a very different way than I do the rest of Christopher Nolan's work. The unnamed main character is performed by John David Washington, and I haven't really seen too much with him in it. And I'm not really familiar with his filmography. I think the only thing I've seen recently that he was in was BlacKkKlansman. But he gave a really solid performance here, and I'm hopeful to see him in more things in the future. But I think the most significant performance for me was Robert Pattinson. And that's not because he does a better job than Washington. In fact, I think Washington was the better actor. But more because of Robert Pattinson being cast in The Batman coming up. Now, a ton of people only know him as the dude from Twilight, and so people are jumping on, bashing on him and saying it's a horrible casting and they don't want to see the movie just because he's playing Batman. But I think his performance here proves solidly that he's going to do a good job as Batman. Now, yes, just recently the trailer dropped for The Batman. I think that does a decent enough job of showing that Robert Pattinson can play the role, but if you still need more convincing, I think Tenet will seal the deal for you. And one of the main things with any work of fiction that seals my appreciation for it is when it sparks ideas for my own writing projects. And this movie definitely did that. So while I did say that I was wrestling with how I felt about this movie, please do not take that to imply that there's anything wrong with the movie, because it's a great movie. I highly recommend it. I just was expecting something a little bit more personal, like something like Interstellar or Dunkirk. But this wasn't as personal, and it was more focused on just the phenomenal technical side of it. Whenever you get the chance, check out this movie. But if you're one of the lucky ones who's been able to see it already, what did you think? Especially knowing that Christopher Nolan really likes to use practical effects and he does not like to use CGI. How do you feel about the special effects in this movie? Like, personally, I want to see the movie again just so I can pick apart how they do everything. And I'm sure I'm not going to be able to figure out the vast majority of it. Share your thoughts with me down in the comments. But if you haven't seen the movie yet because you're not able to, I'm sorry. I really hope you get the chance to see it soon. If you could help me out by doing all the YouTube things, like, share, subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. And until next time, this is Uncle Joel saying, stay tangible.